Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting show of the Exceptionally Irresistible Show. These are our casual chat segments where we invite other exceptionally irresistible, awesome people who are either demonstrating being exceptionally irresistible in their business or they are involved in something exceptionally irresistible. Today, we have the awesome honor, the privilege to hang out with the awesome Murray Beaulieu. People
Oof.
don't pronounce it that well, but
Mm.
Beaulieu
You
is the
nailed it.
actual way to pronounce it. So, Murray, thank you so much for joining us today.
That was an irresistible intro. So yes, I'm glad to be here. Thank you very much for having me. I'm very honored.
For
Appreciate it.
sure. Thank you again. And so, this is the part where I just quickly read through your bio, but then we want to hear directly from you who you are and how you got here. So,
Okay.
we're just going to go right through it. So, Murray was born in Puerto Rico, lived in 13 states, and in Germany for 10 years. He went to the University of Notre Dame and he graduated with 5 years of logistics management officer. He was in the U.S. Army, the Cold War veteran, and 3 years of duty. And then he spent time in Germany, 20 miles from the border. So, um, sorry, I'm skipping something here. And there, we just found it. So he has 34 years of operations and financial manager executive at multiple Fortune 500 electronics companies. Until at some point he's accepted a very generous early retirement offer from his last corporate gig just over a year ago, and now he absolutely loves being an entrepreneur because he feels that he has so much more impact, and he really loves to help people. So he uses his extensive experience and applies it in everything that he does right now. So that's really impressive. Veteran, living in Puerto Rico. I'm sure that looks stunning. I heard so much about it.
I was just a little
Uh,
kid, so I don't remember it too much. But I was actually
okay.
born in a Spanish fort, which is pretty cool. It
Oh
was
wow.
converted into an army base. One of my goals in life is to go back and visit. But yeah, it's a pretty beautiful. Puerto Rico's beautiful. So
Wow.
yeah.
So you sound like somebody who had a like serious journey, who had really something, tell us a little bit about that before we just like jump in into like just the chat.
So my dad was in the army, right? And he served 20 years. So when you're in the military, they move you around every year,
Mm,
and so you're constantly on the move. So it's good and bad. The bad is, it's you get tired of moving all the time. It's easier
yeah.
when you're younger. The older you get, the harder it is to move and to acclimate into new, with new people and stuff. When you're
Mm,
young, it's pretty easy to roll with a punch. But the good thing is, you get good at meeting people, and you get to
mm,
see a lot of the world. And so we moved about every year, and twice we were stationed in Germany, and
wow.
that was awesome. It was during the Cold War. There was a West Germany and East Germany, and then my dad said, "Hey, if you don't know what you want to do for a living, you can always join the army." And so
Mhm,
I went ROTC. I don't know if you know what that means. Reserve. So in college, I took military courses. So I went right from college into the army as a captain, as a lieutenant, actually, as an officer.
mm,
And because I wanted to travel, and I chose Germany because I
mm,
wanted to go to Europe because when you're in Europe, you just drive an hour in any direction. You're in a different
yeah.
country. There's just so many
Wow.
opportunities there. I just love the travel. The army part was a little rough, but the travel was excellent.
Mm,
And we lived half an hour from what was then theoretically the highest probability of attack from the Russians. This is back when there was, we were threatening each other with wiping each other out with nuclear weapons. I was right in the
right.
middle of that, but I still got to enjoy Europe quite a bit. And we went back there on my honeymoon, and it's on my bucket list to keep
Oh
going
wow.
back to Europe. I really love Europe. So
Yeah. So it's incredible, and it sounds like a really unique experience to be in, kind of like in the heart of, I guess, the war, if you will, or the,
it's a
you
Cold
know,
War. I mean, there wasn't bullets fired. It was all
sure.
defensive posturing and stuff like that. But yeah,
Wow.
it was kind of stressful. Uh,
Mhm.
we had to be ready in half an hour if we got called. There was no internet, and
Sure.
so we relied on old landlines, and We had to be near a phone for 3 years. So
Wow.
it was crazy, crazy. I look back and it seems worse now than when you were in the middle of it. But
Right. Right. Right.
you grow up. I get no regrets. I grew up fast.
Yeah. No, I totally relate with you because I often share my story of, there's like sometimes you when you're going through these icebreakers and like what's the craziest experience you've ever went through, and I
Yeah.
share with people being stuck in the middle of a major lockdown in a
Mm,
prison. And right away,
wow.
immediately, like everybody's like, "Well, how
Holy
did you
cow.
get to prison?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, "Well, yeah, I worked in the prison," and it's like today I'm laughing about it, but when it was actually happening, it's pretty scary. I mean, you're like in the middle of you,
Mm,
you don't even know what to expect. You don't even know what you just have like alarms going and like officers running in every direction, and it's like you in the moment it's scary, but then there's years later and you kind of start laughing about it. So
yeah. Yeah.
um,
Well, the scarier it is, the funnier it is later,
right?
right?
All that emotion.
You get some good, yeah, you get some good stories out of it. Yeah. Yeah, we
Exactly.
had,
Yeah.
we had a lot of, crazy stuff happening, and but we made it. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I enjoyed the after hours stuff. I immersed myself in the German culture. I
Mhm.
actually got kind of adopted by my landlord. I lived with a German family,
Wow.
and they actually took me on vacation with them.
Oh, wow.
which is
Wow.
which is
That's a
really,
story.
yeah, it is. So we went to England one time in 1981, and it's significant because not it was during Wimbledon, which in England is a big
Big
deal,
deal.
right? I think it's their
Mhm.
number one sporting thing, and it also was the month that Princess Diana married
Oh, wow.
Prince George or Prince Charles.
Bro.
That
Mhm.
was so much hype. You wouldn't,
Wow.
that was like super, super hype. So that was everywhere. And we
Wow.
were there in the middle of that on a boat in a bunch of, driving through, not driving, uh,
Writing.
shipping through canals. We're living on a boat for a week.
Wow.
Driving.
Wow.
I mean, what a freaking wild with four Germans and me. And
Oh,
the guy
no.
that I was with, my landlord, he, one of the weird things about England and Britain is all the bars and restaurants have weird, you know, they close for like 3 hours during the middle of the day, and
Yeah.
then they
Mhm.
reopen it. This guy had it mapped out. He knew when every bar and restaurant along these
Oh,
canals,
wow.
he scheduled the boat so that we could hit every bar. And I mean, it was very impressive
Wow.
logistics.
Yeah, I mean, also before Google. Like,
Way before, yeah, that's what makes it impressive.
that's
Yeah,
what I'm
yes.
saying,
Now,
very impressive.
yeah, nowadays, no problem. But yeah, then it was pretty wild. They had some bars right on the canal. It was
Wow.
wild, very wild. So
So
anyway,
what was the transition from this kind of like wild life to, Fortune 500 corporate, very rigid,
yeah,
very
yeah.
like
Well, the
roots
army's
down
rigid.
kind
The army's rigid too. So that the job rigidity was consistent. Hierarchies, and
of. Hmm.
I ended up in a defense company which was hiring military people because they wanted managers, right? And
Sure.
it's a defense company. It was kind of it made sense. It
Right.
was hard to leave when you get out of the military. You have to translate your skills into a civilian job, and there's
Right.
quite it's almost like a different planet.
Hmm.
I knew it would be challenging, and it was, and a lot of veterans have a hard time with that. But you have to be able to demonstrate that you can take what you learned in the military and apply it to something else, and you got to be able to tell that story. And so we did, and it was a company that took a lot of military. So we started off in high tech manufacturing. So my first job was making Patriot missiles, which ended up being involved in the war again, the first invasion of Iraq. I don't know
Right.
if you are old enough to remember that, but
Yeah,
Patriot
I
missiles were
do.
a big deal. And I worked on the Patriot missile assembly line, and then so migrated from defense company to semiconductors, which was extremely exciting. You know
Hmm.
what semiconductors are?
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
So the computer chips, which are in everything now. So that was fascinating manufacturing. It's such high
Mm.
tech and clean rooms and billion-dollar pieces of equipment. I mean,
Wow.
really, a lot of machinery, and the finance involved with that was completely different than defense contracting finance. and I pretty
Sure.
much had to learn from ground zero.
Wow.
Uh, but it was great, and I enjoyed all that. Um, but I had reached as far as I was going to get because I'm not quite I wouldn't call myself a political guy. I'm not going to just
Hmm.
agree with somebody to get ahead. So I had gone as far as I was going to go, and with no regrets, they gave me an early retirement,
Hmm.
which was generous, and I became an entrepreneur. So that
Wow.
was pretty exciting, but it's a big leap,
Sure, sure.
big leap.
So what does it look like to go from these, like, let's just go back to that military to, to the corporate world. You're saying that
Mm.
there was challenging to interpret,
Yeah.
military life to civilian life, and then I guess from civilian as in corporate and then into entrepreneur. What does that challenge look like?
All big challenges, so in the Army, there's no like profit and loss statement.
Hmm.
You're not, it's not a business, but but it's a 24-hour a day job, and, you're leading men and women. And there's just so much different. And the language is different. The motivation is different, when
Right.
there's no bonuses and, that kind of stuff. And there's no stocks, and
Hmm.
it's just a completely different mentality. And there's a strong emphasis on teamwork and things like that. And so it's hard. Why would you have to convince somebody in a company when you're leaving the military? Why would I hire you if your experience is driving a tank? No, that
Right.
wasn't my, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, how does that relate
Yeah.
to my company? How can you help
Hmm.
me? So you got to that wasn't what I did. I was actually a logistics manager. So I always felt that was a little bit translatable to a civilian
Right.
job. Uh, and I managed to pull it off. They really liked the leadership. Okay. I became a supervisor in a factory that did soldering and put electronic components together.
Wow.
And I can tell you that, and it was a union company. So it
Mm.
was really difficult. It was strange for me it was almost an antagonistic relationship between union and management, and I was right in the middle of that. I was
Mhm.
the connection between management and union, and you really had to be careful. I couldn't move a box from this table to that table because they had a guy whose job that was to do that, and
Wow.
it was perceived that I was taking away his job. And so
Oh, wow.
all these loony rules,
Sure.
and some of these guys would take it to an extreme just to be antagonistic. And I developed a relationship with over time that we got over that, and we weren't, we were we were working together as best as we could given the circumstances. So that was it. And got a lot done. So that was good. Then I transitioned into a finance role. Then it was a hard transition from a government contractor to a civilian semiconductor company because the finances
Right.
are completely different. Um,
Mm.
in government, it's project management, project finance. There was not a bit. There was one. The P&L was at the highest corporate level. In civilian, you know, uh, business, there was a much more focus on the profit and loss and efficiency. I mean, it was
Mm.
much tighter. I think I did. I got 15 times more done in the civilian job than I did in the government contracting job. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But we were a lot more efficient, getting a lot more done per person. The revenue per person was very high, where we worked. So in other words, we were all collectively getting a lot done. And the company I worked for at that time, when I first started, that was the best job I ever had until I became an
Wow.
entrepreneur, because everybody felt like it was their company. So they all made decisions that they thought were in the best of the company, not necessarily for themselves. It was great.
Yeah.
And no one held back. I mean, we were swearing at each other in meetings, but it was all with
Yeah.
respect. It was all with
Sure.
respect. So there
Mhm.
was very minimal politics, and
Right.
that was refreshing.
Yeah,
So
I'm just saying, like, going from, the different, like as you just showed us, like military, then government contract, and then civilian,
big difference.
semiconductors, and like all these different, elements, it could get like actually very, very overwhelming for a lot of people. Like, suddenly you're put in front of a P&L when, you don't have that much experience with that. And you're kind of
Yeah,
like deer in the headlights. And then you're also kind of like challenged to perform. Like you want to show your bosses that you're the right man for the job.
100%.
It's very easy to fall into this kind of like dysfunctional way of thinking. And it's like, it
Mm,
could get really like, that challenge could either take you down or it could really pick you up. And
mm.
I'm just more like curious, like, how did that journey look like for you? How did that?
I got a good story here for that, right? So defense contracting was completely different than a commercial civilian business, as you've already said.
Right.
So I had a hard time. I sent out like 500 resumes when I was working in a defense contractor before I got a job because it was not translatable and they knew it. They
Mhm.
commercial businesses weren't really excited about hiring government contracting people unless you could put together a real good story.
Mhm.
Finally, I got a job because one of the software systems we used in the defense contractor happened to be the same one that they used in a manufacturing system
Oh
at
wow.
this small semiconductor company, and they interviewed me because of that, and I
Wow.
was able to tell a good story. I got my foot in the door, and I got hired. But I got hired. Listen to this. This is great. I got hired by the CFO,
Oh.
and small company. And within 2 weeks of working there, they fired the CFO.
Oh.
So he was my,
Like your
you know,
go-to guy.
he was my go-to guy.
Yeah.
And they had another guy that was already there, but they moved him over. And after the first week, of working with me, he called me and he says, "Murray, if it was up to me, I never would have hired." This is great, great incentive from this guy. "Murray,
Sure.
if it was up to me, I never would have hired you. You don't know, squat."
Yeah.
And I was like, and he threatened to fire me like at least once a week, at
Oh
least
man.
once a week. I mean, that's pretty rough. And
Yeah.
then there was a turning point. There was a TV show in the 60s called Kung Fu.
Hmm.
Have you ever heard of that?
Heard of it.
You have,
Yeah.
you have to be pretty
Yeah.
old. It was about a very mild-mannered Chinese guy wandering the desert in the West.
Hmm.
who- Uh, and he was into kung fu, but he was also had the mindset. He was very he was very unaggressive. He was very calm. And, throughout the whole movie, all these drunk, cowboys would try to pick a fight with him and he tried to, hold back. And at the end, he just, you know, kick
Breaks
their
them.
ass. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And it was like the first exposure of martial arts to Americans. Okay. It was
Mm.
before Bruce Lee. And it was
Sure.
not as sophisticated as Bruce Lee. It was minor, but in retrospect. But at the time, it was radical, because all
Right.
fights in American movies were like punches, and
Right.
this was the first time they introduced, jujitsu and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
anyway, there was a storyline where, as a kid, he'd flash back as a little kid, and his mentor was a blind man, and he was always trying to grab the rock out of the blind man's hand, and he'd always pull it away, even though he was blind. The little kid could never pull it out, right? And
Mhm.
so, getting back to my boss, who threatened to fire me once a week for about 6 months, we were getting ready to report some big information to the auditors, and I found like a $6 million error that he made in
Wow.
one of the reports. And I said, "Hey, I think you need to check the math on this." And he looked at it and he goes, "Wow."
Mm.
And from that moment on, everything changed. And I said to him, like a couple days later, I noticed a complete 180. And I said to him,
Mm.
you know what I feel like just happened? I said, he goes, "What?" I go, "I want you to hold out your hand. Put this eraser in
Mhm.
your hand. I think I just grabbed the eraser out of your hand." And he knew the
Mm.
reference to Kung Fu, the Kung Fu show.
Yeah.
And he laughed. And
Mm.
after that, he told everybody that he ever talked to that I was the best finance guy he ever worked with. So,
Wow.
I mean, I wouldn't go that far by any means, but we had a great relationship. He was a great mentor. But yes, so to answer your question, it was very hard. It was stressful,
Mhm.
but you just got to go through it. And so I think my past of moving around and changing, and I have a lot of weaknesses, but adapting to new situations is something that's something I'm good at. I'm not afraid
Yeah.
to take on a new challenge. I know I'm not good at a lot of stuff. I try to do better, and I try to learn. And the older I get, the more I know I don't know. But
Right.
um, anyway, it served me well so
Yeah.
far.
So I definitely hear that adaptability as being a massive, massive skill. That really, like, that story really attributed to, having all these challenges, and I
Mm.
actually do relate on being fired every week. I had a boss similar. He used to actually like almost fire the whole company in like every
Yeah.
week. As a joke, we used to say he's probably getting his period this week. But anyway, he used to like.
Not a great management style, right? I would, but anyway.
But yeah, so, and it's like you're right. There's this very big challenge, and you could have easily just buckled under the pressure and kind of like, hey, I don't need this garbage, I'm gonna go find something else, or
Yeah.
whatever other way. And here you were, you rose to the occasion. You weren't afraid to voice your opinion or what you saw. And that effectively transitioned your whole relationship with with
Yeah.
your boss, and perhaps even with your company, um which is just incredible. It's incredible how you took that challenge and you effectively turned it over into a blessing, in a sense,
It
into
turned
an
out to be,
opportunity
yeah.
to grow.
Yeah. It turned out, who knew, but it turned out. And back then it was old, in the 90s, that was the 90s.
Hmm.
It was a different time. I mean, you couldn't get away with that now for sure. I mean, no one would threaten, everyone would leave if you got threatened to get fired. So it was a little bit
Right.
of a different management style, but,
Sure, sure.
I was used to, in the Army, the Army doesn't cut any slack, they don't,
Hmm.
you can't afford to, it's not like a democracy, it's like,
Right.
it's very authoritative. So
Sure.
that kind of management style, it's hard to say I was used to it, but I was familiar with it.
You're familiar. Yeah, you were exposed to it.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
yeah.
So take us now. So basically, you took us through your journey, the challenge of transitioning.
Mm,
Effectively, you did well at your work, and now you're faced with a new challenge. Like, you have to go be an entrepreneur, and then from our previous conversation, and what kind of like triggered the thought to have you on the show was, you seem to be like really excited in this new endeavor. I know it's difficult, but you're
mm,
very excited to be in this new endeavor, and it's like
yeah,
you're striving for the thriving life, in a sense.
yeah.
What does that look like?
So being an entrepreneur, I knew that 99% of it is mindset, and
Mm,
mindset, interestingly, is a word I never heard in
mm,
corporate life. It's not professional development and mindset. Maybe nowadays, but when I
yeah.
was, in my day,
Mhm.
that was just foreign. And I knew that, because when you have a big company, you can have a bad week and you still get paid. When
Right.
you're an entrepreneur, you can have a bad hour. Everything, you know, everything rolls on your own results. And I
Sure.
knew that, and it's very challenging. And I'm not where I want to be by any means, but it's also rewarding and enlightening, and the pluses outweigh the minuses. And the thing that excites me, and by the way, it wasn't an immediate leap into something successful. I screwed up a lot of stuff, right? And I
Mhm.
tried things. My basic idea was to plug into something that was already there,
Right.
so I didn't have to invent my own company from scratch, and to try to leverage, probably, and I'm not a sales guy, so that was really a big hurdle.
Mm,
But try to offer something that somebody else already had, that I liked, that I respected, that I could see the benefit, and I wouldn't have any problem, helping somebody else with this product. And so I tried a few things, and ultimately I never, when I tried to sell them, I was like, God, I don't, my heart's not in this. This is
mm,
not as cool as it seemed when I first heard it. Now it's like, God, I don't know if I want to tell anybody about this. And so I
yeah.
screwed up a lot. I made a lot of mistakes, made a lot of financial mistakes, believe it or not. And
Mhm.
then somebody showed me this program. And so let me give you a little quick story, if you don't mind. So I worked on all these, high level finance for a high tech company, semiconductors, $8 billion company, working with tens and hundreds of millions of dollars. Luckily, I had really smart people working for me because I'm not that smart. But they were all introverted number crunchers, and I was
Mm-hmm.
extroverted. And although I thought I was good at Excel, the numbers, the data was just overwhelming. I got overwhelmed, but I could explain what was going on. I could speak at a high level. I could train people. So it was a great relationship. We saved tens of millions of dollars, not me, but my team.
Sure.
And here's the irony, though, is I had refinanced my house 3 times. So I knew operational finance like the back of my hand, but I didn't know how a mortgage was calculated.
Mm.
In other words, I didn't understand the interest, how I had if I had a 5% mortgage, I thought that borrowing $100 would cost me $5.
Mm.
But that's not how the math works. Here's the one thing I want everybody to take away from this. If you learn nothing else, that every type of debt that you have, this is where, this is what I'm doing now. The space I'm in now is eliminating debt. Every type of debt has interest rates and terms, but the formula for how interest that you pay is determined is completely different for every type of debt. So a mortgage, what you pay in your mortgage is completely different from the math of a credit card, which is completely different than a line of credit, which is completely different than a car loan, which is completely different than a student loan. The
Mm-hmm.
math is different, drastically different. There's open-end loans, there's closed-end loans, and the math is so different. So on a mortgage, you're actually paying substantially more interest than you think. And this was eye-opening for me as a finance professional of 35 years. I majored in finance. I had an MBA, and I didn't know this simple personal finance thing. And when I had hired, after I'd refinanced 3 times, why did I refinance? To get a lower payment,
Mm.
right? But I didn't look at all the other stuff. Other stuff happened, but I kind of didn't want to look, I guess. But
Mm.
so now that I retired, I want to know, I'm looking at it from a different angle. I want to know, when am I going to pay this mortgage off? I've been here
Mm.
25 years, but I've refinanced. What I didn't realize is you start it just didn't sink in. You start the mortgage clock all over again.
All over again.
And the interest you pay at the beginning is substantial.
Mm-hmm.
Banks understood that the average mortgage lasts about 5 to 7 years. People either move or they refinance, right? So they
Right.
crafted this formula called a closed-end amortized loan, which is extremely interest heavy at the beginning. And when you refinance, every time you refinance, you go back to you're paying serious interest.
Mm-hmm.
And, you can't write it off anymore. And you're stuck in a quagmire. You've got to, so I was horrified to realize I wasn't going to pay this mortgage off until I'm 80.
Wow.
Which the last thing I want to do when I'm retired, which is close to happening, hopefully, is to be paying a mortgage. I want to be able to have a lot saved up and spend it, in my retirement. But this was horrifying when I learned that I wasn't going to pay this off till I'm 80. It was probably the lowest moment in my professional career.
Wow.
It was painful. I got physically ill, and it was a real hard conversation to have with my wife because I'm the finance guy,
Right.
and it's being in debt consumed like 20% of my brain and everything I did, and it was like a wet blanket, let's go out to eat. But about the mortgage, we're going to go on vacation next week. But what about the it just, mindset is so important.
Mm-hmm.
And the amount of stress it's caused being in debt. And so anybody out there who's listening to this that has any kind of debt, mortgages is usually the biggest debt that people have. And I would urge everybody to look at their amortization schedule and figure out what they're really paying in interest. And that hanging over your head is very stressful. So anyway, if you have a 5%, if you have a 5.5% mortgage, which is about the average right now, at the end of the 30 years, if you pay it off, the actual interest you pay is going to be more than what you borrowed. So in other words, it's going to equate to over 100%. Now that all the interest you pay on any debt, first of all, you don't get back. It's gone forever. You worked hard. You may have had 2 jobs. You may have worked overtime just so you could afford stuff, so you could get a loan. But the interest you pay, you don't get back. It's a massive opportunity cost. You've heard of that expression, Jeremy?
Mhm. Yeah, sure.
Meaning the money you spend on interest it's more than just the cost of that, because it's money you could have invested and gotten a return. You could have made some money off that. And so by having it tied up into something else, there's an additional cost to your life. The opportunity cost of missing out on something else that you could have made money from. And then stress, and there's a whole bunch of reasons why you don't want to be in debt. So that leads me to where I am now, which
Yeah.
is we have a world award-winning program as awarded by Ernst & Young, which is one of the 3rd largest accounting firm in the world, which will show you how to wipe out all your debt in as little as 1/3 to 1/2 the time, without changing your lifestyle, without changing your budget, without changing your cash flow. So you don't have to sell your car and ride a bike. You don't have to live on ramen noodles. It's just using discretionary income, and it
Wow.
will wipe out. It uses there's 35 pages of banking algorithms in the background, and
Wow.
it will leverage. It's like having the bank on your team.
Wow.
So it's like a financial GPS. So your destination is to be debt free, and it will tell you where to turn the wheel to get to debt free based on all your debt, all your income, and all your expenses, like a GPS.
Wow.
And like a GPS, it reacts in real time. So if something happens, if the bridge is out, traffic jam, it recalculates. If
Incredible.
your refrigerator goes out, you got to buy a new refrigerator, or you're on a commission, you didn't make any money this month, it recalculates. It will still get you to where you want to go, but it just changes the route. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. So I mean, that really right there, ties it in that, when we talk about thriving, people are when we hear, people want that free life, or they want to be, let's say, debt free or whatever it is. But then they don't have that freedom
yeah,
across all areas of their life. Like you were
mm,
talking about earlier, you're afraid to go to the restaurant,
yeah,
perhaps as a relationship building, exercise between you and your wife,
mm,
because you want to strengthen your relationship. But
right,
now it's this debt that's on your mind, so
yeah,
you're not totally free, even though you're living this whatever so-called free life. But the
yeah,
idea of thriving is to thrive in all areas of your life. In
mm,
other words, like everything is moving forward. Maybe you're not entirely debt free, but you have a good relationship, you have a good health, you have a good everything. And definitely a program like yours could definitely, benefit somebody to at least take care of that debt area.
yeah, yeah.
And we talk a lot about this, and it's so important.
Yeah, I can't tell you how much stress melted away from me when I still have debt. I'm paying it off, but I'm using the
Sure.
program. But I have a path.
Right.
I have a GPS to get there,
Direction.
and
Hmm.
it's not like I'm just winging it, you know.
Right.
And this works really well with if you have multiple debts, like which one do I pay off first,
Right.
and the fact that you don't have to change your lifestyle
Hmm.
is so powerful. It's
Yeah.
only it uses everything you have, so there's nothing laying around. Every penny you have in different accounts. It's only using what we call discretionary income,
It's
which is
incredible.
a fancy way of saying money that's not already allocated. So at the end
Right.
of the month, whatever you have left over that didn't have to be paid in bills, or you weren't investing it, or
Hmm.
already using it for a vacation or whatever's left, this is putting it to use on your behalf,
Right.
like a bank would do.
Right.
Banks make money from money. Do you
Right.
ever notice the largest building in
Sure.
every town you drive through has a bank name on it usually?
Yep. That's very true. And
So
that's exactly
here's an example of a banking concept, okay, that everyone knows, but maybe you haven't thought of it this way. So this is like 1/1,000,000th of the things going on in the background. So, Yerma, you have a checking account, right?
hmm
Okay, what are they paying you in interest in a checking account?
Then probably nothing.
Zero.
Or yeah.
No, it's got to be. I don't know anybody who hasn't said other. It's always zero.
Mm-hmm.
So they have. So your money is in a checking account, and that changes. The amount changes, but whatever you have in your checking account, they're not paying you anything. They turn
Mm-hmm.
around and they loan that out to people, right? In the form of a credit card or a loan or a mortgage or whatever. That's what banks do. They
Mm-hmm.
give people resources to do stuff. So they're making this interest and they're paying you zero. So that's
Mm-hmm.
called interest rate arbitrage, right? So that is something that's always, and not only that, they take it further, that they're based on something called fractional reserve banking. They can loan that out to 10 people. So they're leveraging your money,
Mm.
making money on your money and not paying you anything. And that's just one of a whole bunch of
Sure.
stuff going on. That's an example
Mhm.
of how you can bank like a bank. So our program is using those concepts of interest
Wow.
rate arbitrage, offset accounts, strategic payoff. And there's a whole laundry list of things going on in the background that,
Wow.
in your favor, though.
Sure. Sure.
Normally the bank, here's a news flash, banks don't operate with you they don't have your best interests at heart.
No
I know
way.
you,
Really?
yeah, yeah. Surprising. I know people are shocked
Oh
when I say that.
man.
Yeah. Geez, I thought they were looking out for me. No, but seriously, so it's awesome stuff in your back pocket that they're using. It's like having, and not only that, I got to tell you another story. You like stories, right?
Oh yeah.
So, it's not only paying off your debt, but it's a cash management tool. It's able to project the future. So you have a dashboard that has your debt-free date and how long that's going to be and how much interest you're going to save along the way. And it's constantly recalculating, just like a GPS says arrival time,
Right.
31 minutes, right? So this same thing. So you know the immediate impact of the right turn you're going to make. Oh, that added another minute. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Same thing here. So let me tell you a story about my senior partner, who is the leading sales guy in our company. His wife uses the program in the family, right? They're big,
Mm-hmm.
they're huge fans, obviously. They've saved hundreds of thousands of dollars on mortgages and stuff like that. His wife is a huge fan. She's using it religiously. It takes about 10 minutes a week. And they both drink a lot of coffee.
Oh wow.
A lot of coffee. And I'm telling you, a
Mm.
lot of coffee. So they used to be big Starbucks fans. So not cheap, right? Those
Sure.
$5 to $6 for the big Starbucks,
Mhm.
right? So one day his wife told him, look, I know we drink a lot of coffee. I'd like to buy you this super duper espresso coffee maker, $500, does everything, washes your dog, cleans your car and makes awesome coffee for $500. And he goes, we can't afford a $500 coffee maker.
Mm.
And so she turned the computer around and she says, take a look at the numbers. So she
Mm.
input the coffee maker as a what if scenario. What if we add a one-time $500 fee? What does that do to our debt-free date? And everything recalculated just like a GPS. And then at the same time, she went into the budget and said, now we're not going to have to go to Starbucks as much. They must have
Right.
been going like 2 or 3 times a day. I don't
Wow.
know, some outrageous number. So they adjusted the Starbucks budget. She did appropriately to the coffee that was going to be generated from this, the home
Machine.
machine.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe she still left some money in there to go to Starbucks.
Wow.
So she did all the math, and the end result of buying a $500 coffee maker and reducing trips to Starbucks was they were going to cut 9 months of debt
Wow.
off the total time. So it went from like 5 years to 4 years and 3 months or something
Wow.
ludicrous like that. And they were like,
That's crazy.
and it's
Yeah.
mathematics. It's not like a
Mhm.
guess. This
Sure.
is, so you can do that kind of stuff. You can do, he's doing real estate. He's buying real estate. So he
Mm-hmm.
puts in that in the future. What if I buy a residential home and then what if I got to put in the rental income I'm going to get and then all the expenses? What would that
Wow.
look like? And so the program helps helps, not just the income
That.
from the
Yeah.
mortgage, but from the rent, I mean, but also everything gets cycled through, and he's going to be able
Crazy.
to buy a home every 2 years.
Wow.
with this, and just increase his portfolio. So
Yeah.
I honestly feel like we have the cure for cancer here, man. I mean, this is like
Mhm.
debt cancer.
Yeah.
This is the greatest thing, and I have no trouble, as you can tell, because you can't shut me up. I have no trouble talking about this, because this is, and people are struggling. I don't have to tell you, the economy, interest rates,
Hmm.
it's really challenging. So the last thing people need, and credit card debt is at an all-time high, student
Sure.
loan debt is at an all-time high, mortgage interest is going up. Um,
Mhm.
Not that it would change if you already had one, but you can't refinance anymore because rates are going up. So wouldn't it be nice to get rid of debt, get debt off the table?
Mhm.
So
Yeah. So that's exactly it, and that's what makes it so exceptionally irresistible, and that's why you're here on the show. It's really about managing. It's like the way I see it, and the way why I like the program so much, is that it's because it's less about, like, I'm not a huge guy against debt. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not against. Sometimes debt is actually good. I
exactly.
think, I think we had the conversation between consumer debt
Yeah.
versus commercial debt.
Yeah.
Some debt is good. You just have to know how to manage your debt, well.
Exactly.
And that's why we did want to highlight the program, and
Yeah.
we're so excited to introduce you to our platform. That other people should get to know you.
Mm.
And if anybody wants to get in touch with Murray, this is the opportunity. I highly encourage it. So we're highly impressed by this program. Let's just say it that way. Um, and so it's on LinkedIn. You just have to search Murray Beaulieu, and you guys could also get, at least, let's say, not debt free, but at least manage your finances in a smart way, especially during these times. These times are
Mm.
difficult. We will
Mm.
get through it. We will get through it. But those who are able to manage their finances in a smart way will
Mm.
be ahead of the curve. So definitely connect with Murray. And this is the part of the show where we invite you, the guests, that if you are somebody who is exceptionally irresistible, or that has a story that's exceptionally irresistible, or that you are involved with something that's exceptionally irresistible, we want to highlight you as well. We want the
Mm.
platform, we want the people who are watching this to also get to hear you. Why? Because we believe that everybody has a fingerprint, and it's upon you to leave your mark on this world, and we want to help and facilitate that. So
Beautiful.
without further ado, please contact us as well. Exceptionallyirresistible@gmail.com. That's the way to get to us, or on LinkedIn or anywhere else. And we want to highlight you, so please reach out, and we would love to interview and highlight you. So that's the end of today's show. Robert Murray, you were incredible.
Thank you.
Sorry, Robert. I don't know how to get to Robert. You remind me of my friend Robert Murray, actually. So
He must be
I
smart and good looking too, I guess. No, I'm just kidding.
Robert Murray is
Eh?
also an awesome guy. We're trying to get him on the show.
Oh, good.
With Murray Beaulieu, thank you so much for being so awesome. And yeah, you gave us so much incredible things to think about, and to definitely, consider to reach out to you, and really, manage our debt. That's really, really important. So
That's awesome. Well, thank
thanks
you for
again
the
for showing
opportunity,
up today.
Yermi. You are an irresistible guy. I would encourage
Oh.
everybody to check Yermi out. What's the uh, I can't think of the guy's name, but he said you will get everything you want in life if you give people what they need. I can't think of the quote. You know what I'm
Mm.
talking about, right?
I know exactly what you're talking about. I can't remember who said it either.
Yeah,
I
but
definitely heard that.
it's a famous
Yes.
mindset guy,
Yeah. Mhm.
um, who passed away recently. But Yermi is that kind of guy who is
Wow.
always giving first, and that's why he's successful. Is because he never expects things in return, but it comes back to him, many times over, and well deserved. So thank you, Yermi. You are
Thank
the
you,
man.
Rory. Thank you so much. Have a great
All right.
day. Thank you, everybody, for showing up, and see you at the next Casual Chats. Bye bye.
Bye.